Chapter 6. It took another month for the pit that Tony had chosen for his egg to turn violet. Eric's chosen pit was now indigo. After that happened, Khalil noticed his shifts had gotten shorter. Instead of his normal 8 hours, Tony left him with 6-hour shifts. Khalil didn't mind, of course. He used the time for extra training, both by himself and with Cassandra. She grew quickly in that first month, physically, mentally, and in strength. 2 weeks after her birth, she had finally unfolded her wings. That didn't mean she could fly, however. They had learned that when they took her to the top of their cave and let her jump off. She had plummeted, thankfully not taking any damage. Eric had convinced her to try again a week later when her wingspan had increased from half of her height to 3/4. That time, she had still fallen, albeit much slower. Eric trained her as if she was a full gallon, instructing her to focus on the fire within. Khalil had gained enough control over his abilities to convince Eric to spar with him. Eric had agreed, but he would not let Khalil have his chakrams. He had confiscated them when they first started their training, telling him he did not want him to become over-reliant on external weapons. Even though he gave his all, Khalil knew Eric was holding back. When a month had passed since Cassandra's birth and Tony's egg rested in a violet pit, Cassandra started spending more time at the egg's side as well. She would leave her pit to join Tony at the end of his shift and stay a little later into Eric's shift. None of Amaterasu's eggs hatched despite soaking in violet magma for more than 3 months. Eric had expressed his concern, fearing what would happen if they didn't hatch in the 2 to 3 year time span Amaterasu had given them. It had already been 2 years and 4 months since the founding of the nursery. Despite all his time at the egg's pit, Tony did not slack on his training either. His staff had been confiscated as well so that he could cultivate his fire within. Eric had told him it was imperative for a mage to have precise control over his fire. Instead, it was his sleep that he had decided to cut out of the equation. When Khalil voiced his concern, Tony had told him that he hadn't been getting much sleep anyways, and that he might as well put that time to good use. Khalil hadn't argued with him since he knew it to be true. He had walked in on Tony crying in his own lava pit multiple times since Barb's death. This motivated him to train even harder. He would never hurt his friend in that way again. Another 3 months passed. It happened while Khalil was watching over the eggs. First, he saw the swirling pit of violet magma become disrupted. What is happening? He ran into their chamber, almost tripping over his own feet. Eric! Tony! Come quick! Tony shot out of his magma pit, lava erupting in all directions. Cassandra was laying on the surface of the magma, a trick she had only learned a week ago. When she stood on all fours, her height reached 7 feet tall. Her wingspan was now approximately 10.5 feet. While Khalil had struggled to learn magma walking, Tony had not. Cassandra splashed lava from her own pit at Tony before walking to the edge. Soon, Eric, Tony, Cassandra, and Khalil were standing outside of the magma pit, watching the intermittent distortions become more frequent. Eric gave Tony a container of clam chowder, a dish that contained clams, burritos, and levats, swimming in a thick lava broth. After waiting for a few moments, the head of a gallon poked above the magma. Tony gave it a confused look. It stared back at him, then the bowl he had in his hand. Tony gave the container a light shake, fluid sloshing about. The newborn licked its lips. A hand with claws grasped the edge of the pit, and the newborn pulled itself out. On its back were 2 majestic obsidian wings, as big as Cassandra's. The being stood on 2 feet and was 4 feet tall. Cassandra stepped forward and silently spoke to her siblings. Their conversation was a short one. Their newest member kept glancing at the container in Tony's hand. Its eye socket glowed with a bright yellow light. Slowly, words escaped its mouth. Please, I want. Eric laughed. This never gets old. Tony opened the container and handed it to the creature. Khalil watched it shovel food into its mouth. Why is it so different from Cassandra? More? Tony raced back into their chamber. When Tony had left, Khalil turned to Eric. Cassandra and, well, I already know her name is Barb, are not full gallons. We need a name for them. Eric scratched his chin where obsidian stubble had started to grow. The stubble shot out of his chin in sharp angles, reflecting the light from the different magma pools. Yes, I agree. I do not believe their species has one yet. As I said, it was irresponsible for their parents to try what they did. They couldn't have known this would be the result. What if we called them draglums? They are still part Gallum and Muspelheim dragon. Yes, I like that. Tony returned with raw Ferrados, clams, and lavettes. Eric, we need to cook soon. I couldn't find any dishes. Eric nodded his agreement. Tony gave the creature the round see-through fruit. It had a yellow flame burning in its center. The newborn ate the fruit in one bite and stared at Tony expectantly. Next, he grabbed a clam and pried its shell open. The clam's teeth dug into his obsidian scale before breaking. Orange fire spewed out from within the shell as the glowing violet meat inside became exposed. The creature reached for it, even more excited than when it had been given the ferreto. Tony pulled it out of its reach. I'd like to know your name. Barb. I am Barb. A yellow ember escaped Tony's left eye as he wordlessly handed the clam to Barb. She ate it quickly, licking the inside of the shell when she was done. She glanced at the lavette that he had brought and seemed to consider the option of passing. This thought did not prevail for long. Please? Tony gave her the long, skinny vegetable. It was fiery orange with stone leaves sprouting from the top. These vegetables grew in the ground fairly quickly and were the food source they had the most of. Because of this, it made an excellent snack and had low energy replenishing properties, unlike the Ferrados, which replenish energy based on their fire within. Their quick growth time also made lavettes an excellent filler in many dishes. Barb crunched on the lavette and gave a slurp. Smoke filled the air. Her eyes were now golden yellow. They observed her as she climbed back into her pit, a long obsidian tail trailing behind her. Although she did not have spikes on her spine in the way that Cassandra did, Barb's tail contained 2 rows of spikes jutting out in opposite directions. Tony finally spoke again. We have a better pit for you. Come with me. The group traveled to their main chamber. It had been 2 years and 7 months since the founding of the nursery. None of Amaterasu's eggs had hatched, and 2 of Barb's eggs had hatched. The last of her eggs was now sitting in an indigo magma pit.